Welcome back to another book review. My name is Gabby. This is my channel where we yap about all things bookish. It's very informal. I've got some notes right here that I will be referencing. So let's get into today's book, which is A Most Agreeable Murder by Julia Seals. As we get into this, I want to first and foremost apologize for my face. If you're like, girl, what's wrong with your face? I have eczema, okay? I'm 30 and I have eczema and I have acne. Keep it to yourself. So this book falls in what I would consider like the cozy mystery category, and not because it's happening at a time like winter or fall where it just feels snuggly. It felt very unserious, and I think that that's because it's also a satire. It also is based in the Regency era, and maybe for fun I'll put some pictures here because I did read this as part of a Discord book club, and when we went to the book club she had Regency photos up, and I just felt like that really brought me into the space more than it was when I read it the first time. Something I really enjoy about Regency era is it does remind me of the books that I read back when I was in college, so it does take me back. I have an easier time. As you know, I'm not a big fan of historical fiction right now at this point in my life, but specifically the Regency era because that happened to be my specialty. I didn't choose it. Your specialty just happens to find you when you're in college, and if you've ever gone to school for literature, you probably know that. Or really anything. I feel like your specialty just finds you. But yeah, it just reminds me of college, so I did enjoy that. It is marketed, if you go on Goodreads and you look at the genres, it's marketed as historical fiction. I don't know if I'd agree with that, and we're gonna get into it as I explain a little bit more about the book. But it's giving like maybe a little bit fantasy realism, not historical fiction. So let's just jump into it. Some of the themes to kind of know primarily are the satire surrounding sexism, feminism, and all of that. So the book is about this woman, Beatrice, and she is to inherit her father's money. But back in the Regency era, if you were a woman, you could not inherit your father's money. You kind of had to like marry off and give your husband the money, which as we know is like really messed up. And so her mother decides that she needs to throw a ball because her girls, they're of age, they need to get married. And at this ball, a murder takes place. And we get to then see the cast of characters go out and solve this murder, primarily Beatrice. I think something that I struggled with this book, and I gave this book 3 stars on Goodreads if you want to check it out. The thing that I really struggled with this book is that I was about 40% of the way through the book. And at one point I asked myself, did I miss the murder? Like, we're almost at the halfway mark. Why is the murder not happened yet? And I really did thought that I missed it. And then sure enough, it kind of stumbled into my lap a few pages later. But I felt like we really dragged on to get to the murder, and then things definitely did pick up once the murder happened, but the things that were picking up, I was not keeping for myself. I was like, what is going on? A lot was happening. So one of my favorite satirical parts that leads into the murder, where you really start to get like, okay, this is supposed to be funny, this is supposed to be satire. Once the murder happens, the mother, she's like so upset, and she's like, instead of being like, oh my God, there's a dead body, which is what you would think would happen, she's like, this would happen to me. There would be a murder. Who will marry my daughters now? And I actually remember laughing out loud. It was kind of the first time I've done that for a while in a book, and I really love a book that can make me express physical emotion outside. Like, I want to cry, I want to laugh, I want to feel like I need to put it down and walk away. So that was very funny to me. Another area where we see kind of like this satire that then leads into maybe some magical realism is there's a character called Miss Bolton. And I guess from what I heard in my Discord book club, she is maybe modeled after a Bridgerton character. I've never seen Bridgerton, so I don't want to give you information about that specifically. But she has this big hat, and she pulls like all sorts of crazy things out of her hat. And I actually didn't even put 2 and 2 together at the time until I was in book club and we were talking about it. It's very Mary Poppins of her. And so that was definitely another like funny additive point that I enjoyed. I think the humor I definitely enjoyed more than anything else in this book. So now we're in our qualms corner. Welcome to Qualms Corner. This is the time of the review where I tell you all of the issues that I had, big and small, with a book. These are, I'd say we're moderate qualms. Maybe someday I'll come up with like a qualm chart. That's not going to be today. But in Qualms Corner, we have weird plot holes. One of those being, and this was like the most talked about in my book club, is Mary, who is the sister. She reads very young, but is actually older. So like the whole time you're reading it, and one of the girls said like, oh, she's just an innocent little girl or just an innocent little werewolf, which I'll explain after, because she read so young, and it's not until the end that you kind of like register how old Mary is. But Mary has these weird like werewolf tendencies, and that's never explained. Maybe it'll get explained in the next book. We joked about how if the next book comes out and Mary gets more of a story and we understand her a little bit better, maybe we'd be interested in reading it. But Mary, werewolf, ? We have Edmund's sister, who, again, I don't want to give away like too many spoilers. I won't tell you how it ends, but there's character Edmund, his sister gets locked. She's locked up in the house and a fire occurs, and upon rescuing her, she's mad. She's not like, oh my God, finally, thank you. Like, thank you for saving my life. She's mad. And then we also just kind of glaze over it. And somebody mentioned in the book club, I'm quoting these people, if you're like, why are you mentioning your book club so much? I don't ever want to say something is my original idea unless I actually think it's my original idea. So if someone said it first, and I know that someone said it first, I will always reference them. But she comes out, right? She's been locked up, and somebody mentioned that they were often talking about like thunder, but never mentioned that the thunder sounded abnormal. And come to find out, like Mary's incessant like banging to get out of this place that she was locked was the thunder. And that was happening long before the fire occurred. So just know Mary was locked up for quite some time. And then it felt like we glazed over it. Swampshire, I don't really know how you pronounce it. It's giving magical. There's like glowing frogs, there's sinkholes, it's giving Shrek, it's giving ogre. I mean, swamp is exactly what you would imagine it to be. So when I say that it doesn't really feel like historical fiction, that is because these things all feel very out of place, right? This idea that like we have Swampshire with glowing frogs and sinkholes, and then Mary, who might be a werewolf, and that's never explained. We never quite figure out anything about the place. If it is magical, if it's not magical, I don't know. I think another qualm that then leads into it is that this author had so many ideas, so many fun ideas. And I just feel like somebody put, I guess this is her debut book, on reviews on Goodreads. Somebody said she had the case of like first book syndrome, which is when you have so many great ideas and you shove them all into one book when maybe you should have applied them across different books. And I would absolutely agree with that. Like Swampshire as a place is like a really cool concept, but then we're putting like a Regency era ball there, as well as like Miss Bolton as a character is very cool, but it's giving very fantastical and is never addressed. Mary potentially being a werewolf, really cool idea, never addressed. It does show though, like between the humor and everything, that Julia Seals clearly has like a passion for the book, and the book ends with like recipes that I don't know if they're actually from the time or what, because I learned about this through the book club. In the audiobook, I did not get those recipes. I thought I listened to the audiobook all the way to the end, but somebody did mention maybe I never quite made it there. Maybe I heard acknowledgements and I was like, get me out of here, on to the next book, which is very well a possibility, but I usually do listen, so I'm not sure if they're just not included. I also don't know how you would go about reading the recipe per se. I guess you could read it flat out, but it wouldn't be very exciting to listen to. So yeah, I just thought that there was a lot going on, right? We have the recipes, we've got the places, we've got the people, and none of them in particular feel very cohesive. And my final qualm, the thing that really gave it the 3 stars for me, other than the very confusing aspect of it all, and it's less an issue with Julia Seals as a writer and more of an issue with contemporary books now. And I may have mentioned this in the past. If not, I'm sure I'm going to mention it again in the future. But contemporary literature lately has often lent itself to the author thinking that the reader is illiterate. And I can completely understand why that is, because most readers nowadays are illiterate. We often see people going in, they're not getting the context clues. I feel like that's changing a little more right now with people being as big into Taylor Swift, which I know is kind of controversial to talk about right now with her new album release, and The Summer I Turned Pretty. People are really starting to understand that you can pick apart a story and see that it's so much more than it should be. But I feel like a lot of contemporary authors are not necessarily doing that. And sometimes I wonder, is it me? Am I just not seeing them? But I don't think I am. And so the best example I can give is that in this book, we see the main character, Beatrice, from the very beginning kind of mention that she is interested in murder. She's reading news clippings and hiding them away, which gives us this idea to either believe, one, she's really weirdly into murder because maybe she is a murderer, or two, she's not supposed to be interested. And at some point she does say it and somebody else makes a comment on it, but then it continues to be an ongoing internal thought and external dialogue throughout the entire book, that she is a woman and she should not be into murder or mystery. That is not womanly of her. Nobody will ever love her for that. And I feel like it came up very frequently throughout the book. Like, it felt like almost every other page, honestly. So we get it with her very often saying like, oh, I should stay out of it. I shouldn't be into murder. Oh, I should have never sent those letters. I shouldn't be interested in murder. And it always is followed up with, because I'm a woman. So it's making it very known, because I'm a woman, because I'm a woman. And that's where the sexism, feminism thing comes into play, because we like what we like and we're interested in whatever we want to. And just because it's in the Regency era doesn't mean that, you know, yes, back then you shouldn't be, but, you know, it's this bigger take on, you know, we shouldn't tell anybody what they can and cannot be interested in, I guess. But yeah, then we see it play out with, once the murder occurs, everyone's telling her like, oh, you should sit this out, like, you're a woman. It just felt like very redundant. We get it. She shouldn't be into murder, but she is. Why do we need to keep saying it? I think the reader gets it. And it's a common thing I see a lot of authors do nowadays. Another area that I see it is that they'll repeat a first and last name of a character. So like, you know, let's say there's nobody in the book with this name, but let's say their name was like Audrey Lemon. Every time that character gets referenced, they're like, and that's what Audrey Lemon said, Audrey Lemon. And you never meet someone that you're talking about, somebody you know very well and personally, on a two-name basis, right? Like, I wouldn't go around talking about, you know, my neighbor, Joe Smith, who I'm very close with and have dinner with regularly. And when I bring him up to my mom, who knows who he is, say, oh, you know, Joe Smith. Joe Smith. It's one thing to do it in reference of like this particular person, but it seems like it happens a lot in books now where like we're just referring to them as first and last name. And maybe just here in New England we're not doing that. Maybe wherever you're from people are doing that, but we're not doing that here. Finally, a qualm I have, but didn't necessarily take me out of the book, and I actually didn't even realize until I was in book club, is that it also, for being historical fiction, was historically inaccurate. So at one point they bring out handcuffs, and handcuffs weren't even invented until the 1900s. And there are a couple other mentions of things that just like did not exist during the time. And I thought that was very interesting, especially for somebody who you can really tell that the author, because this is her debut novel, put a lot of love and a lot of thought into this, especially with like the end of the book having the recipes and things like that. So it's just interesting that she'd go out of her way to like look up these recipes that potentially, I don't know, are period accurate and historically accurate, but like couldn't even look up things like handcuffs. But I guess maybe if you don't realize that they were made that early, you would have no reason to look them up. So that's actually a small qualm. If I had a chart, it would fall on the small scale. So that is my review of A Most Agreeable Murder. If you read this book and you like it, let me know down below. If you didn't like it, let me know down below. Just chat with me. We're yapping. It's a book club. I want to know your thoughts. If you like this video, like and subscribe, because I release a new book review, hopefully at least once a week, as long as I can read and I'm capable of doing so. So thank you. I will see you next time.